Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this session, Clean Industry, Real Projects, Real Progress, Real Bright Spots. It's hosted today by AFID, the Climate Club, ITA, and the Leadership Group for Industry Transition, Lead It. My name is Artie Davis. I'm the business lead for Lead It, and very honored to be hosting and moderating this panel with you today. Some of you have been here for a few days this week. Some of you have been here over a week. And we've all heard the same things. We've heard that this transition is difficult. This transition is counterintuitive. This transition in our turbulent times maybe should be put on pause. What we're here to do today to say we have isolated success stories. How do we create full transformation, scale, replication, and breakthrough? We will hear from speakers today about how this is being done and how we move forward together. To help us unpack some of these questions, I would like to welcome on stage Simon Steele, Executive Secretary, UNFCCC, to give us today's keynote. Simon.
Thank you very much, Artie. I hope my voice, yes, we can get that. So good morning, dear colleagues, dear friends. So thank you to the Industrial Transition Accelerator and partners for bringing us together at this crucial moment. Today we celebrate a milestone for clean industry and for the global energy transition. Around the world, first-of-a-kind clean industrial projects. Close up. Around the world, first-of-a-kind clean industrial projects are moving from concept to construction. From green hydrogen-based steel production in Europe to clean fuels and fertilizers across the new industrial Sunbelt. This transition is real and it's accelerating. This momentum is not an accident. It reflects years of collaboration, innovation, and determination to make clean industry a central pillar of the global transition. Let me say clearly, progress is real. The data insights captured by the Mission Possible Partnerships Global Project Tracker show that clean industry is not just emerging, it's thriving. In just the past 6 months, we have seen a new wave of industrial projects reach final investment decision. These are commercial scale projects that will cut emissions, create jobs, and prove that heavy industry can decarbonize whilst driving growth, however difficult the circumstances. But let me pause and acknowledge a reality we can't overlook. None of this is a given. The headwinds we face are real. Hard-won momentum can be lost. Everyone in this room has a role to play in keeping progress alive. Your leadership has never been more crucial because success depends on strong partnerships and coordination across government, industry, and finance. The ITA has created a powerful platform to connect these actors and send a clear signal to markets. When policy direction, private investment, and technological innovation align, momentum builds, and it builds fast. But we must ensure that the benefits of this transition are shared. Clean industry must be inclusive, creating opportunities for workers, communities, and regions that have powered the old economy. And crucially, it must be scaled. As highlighted by the ITA's Build Clean Now campaign, planned clean industry projects worldwide are worth somewhere in the region of $1.6 trillion. Impressive, but relative to the scale of the problem, the pace of financing and construction remains too slow. Getting these projects financed and built will transform economies, support a healthier planet, and unleash unstoppable progress that benefits more people in more places. Today, we send a powerful message. The clean industry transformation is not something we're waiting for. It is something we're building together right now. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Simon, for being with us today and giving us that keynote. What we take away from today, if nothing else, that we need to hold on to is progress is real. How do we scale this? And how do we actually contribute to this transition? Our second keynote is Heike Hennet, Director General, International Climate Policy, Federal Ministry for the Environment, Climate Action and Nuclear Safety, Government of Germany. Over to you.
Good morning. Thank you very much, Arti. Colleagues and friends, it's great to be here, speaking after Simon Steele, and really on a topic that is one of the key themes of Germany here at this COP. And to be here also in partnership with the other partners for this event is even greater. And for us, this theme over the 2 weeks, more to come, started with a high-level event with our Chancellor during the Leaders Summit. So where it was behind scenes and really talking policies, success stories, and collaboration. Some key themes we also, I think, will see today. And we know all about the challenges. We heard it from Simon. We know that 1/4 of the emissions is coming from heavy industry. We know that if we want to close the gap, and we want to close the gap, the NDC gap here at COP, it's also something we need to do about decarbonization of the industry. But it's also a key topic about the just transition. It's about jobs, it's about competitiveness. So in all countries, this is also a subject for debate, for questions, and where we have to drive by the good examples, by the success stories, and by collaboration. So it's a historical task, we heard it, but it's doable. There are large investments needed, and it's a key question of competitiveness. So we have jointly to create the right conditions and to support new and innovative technologies and processes that strengthen the competitiveness and the resilience. And when we do it with others, it will provide win-win solutions for everybody involved. And that reduces then the competition between us. So to unlock the opportunities, it has to be a convincing business case. So I want to share some of the examples from Europe and Germany and not shy away. I mean, you all can read it in newspapers, that it is a clear debate in Europe. So this is something that also was part of our quite challenging NDC discussion. But we have some key policies implemented in Germany and Europe, and we stick to it. And a lot has been in motion or set in motion by the EU emissions trading system as the center. And a broad set of policies was introduced in addition under the Green Deal. And now we are coming up with a framework on the Clean Industrial Deal. So clear policies, clear direction, and no zigzagging, no policy changes on the way. So one of the main policy levers is the creation of lead markets for green industrial products, and the support then also needed for investments. And to create the lead markets, the producers need reliable signals. This is why I was talking about the consistency of policies, because policies also signal from potential buyers that there's appetite in the market, and therefore the investments can flow. And as governments, therefore, we should not only provide coherent policies, but also an initial demand for the new materials and products we want to see on these markets. And the European and German policy is targeted towards that. Supply chains and markets for emission-intensive industrial products are globally integrated. I see some colleagues and friends from other countries here. So the industrial transformation cannot be addressed successfully by national policy action alone. And this is true for all climate efforts, as all of us know here in Belém. And therefore, Germany created the Climate Club, now having 46 members, and from different geographies, and still growing. And we are a high ambition forum for cooperative approaches to accelerate industry decarbonization, right now chaired by Chile and Germany. And we have 3 key deliverables of our work. First, understanding international spillover effects, and also find ways to have common ways of talking about it. David knows it better than I, to not have unilateral measures thrown at us at all times. So, but work jointly on principles for carbon leakage measures, because we can now already hear from Brazil and others that they know what the challenge is here. So having a joint understanding of this was the first deliverable this year agreed in the Climate Club. Second one, we have this year a global pledge to grow near zero and low emission steel and cement markets. With this pledge, Climate Club members voluntarily express their intent to scale up clean industrial production through domestic policies and international cooperation, to create needed markets on a global level and give again an important signal to industry. And I thank all our partners for this really ambitious next step. And this is really a cornerstone to our work, to enabling conditions for early movers. Third and last deliverable for this year of the Climate Club is a matchmaking platform for the emerging markets and developing countries, because their collaboration support is needed to accelerate or leapfrog their industrial decarbonization. And it's really a central support mechanism by the Climate Club that strengthens also its appeal over all geographical and economical areas. It has been full operational since COP29. The GMP matches requests for technical and financial assistance, and with corresponding financial resources of key delivery partners of the global matchmaking platform. And with a wide and growing number of delivery partners, EBRD, OECD, World Bank, CIF, and UNDP, we have really from different avenues, technical and financial assistance providers coming in to match the request. So we support it also with NDC, policy advice, sectoral decarbonization roadmaps for cement and steel, transparency and MRV measures. So it's a really whole support package to have a joint and coherent approach for ambition and for faster decarbonization of the industry for the benefit of all countries and people. And Tuesday we have a high-level event in the German pavilion at 10 o'clock with news, exciting news on the Climate Club. I will not spoil it here. And thank you very much for your attention. Looking forward to the panel and the discussion.
Heike, thank you so much. We need to make this journey together, support at all levels, not just the UNFCCC, but every government, every industry body to actually speak the same language. So to reiterate what you said, Heike, we said we're talking business. There has to be a business case here. In order to close the gap, we have to collaborate, not compete. And to do that, we need predictability. We need reliability, not just within Europe, but for emerging economies also, as they start to make this transition, and as you said, leapfrog for the change that we want to see. We will unpack this, the devil in the details, in the panel discussion we have coming up, but to help set the stage for that, I'd like to welcome on stage Michael Apicelli, head of the Secretariat for the Climate Club. Please, Michael.
Yeah, thanks so much, Arati. And wow, so great to see all of you. Already a growing number of familiar faces from my time here on the ground in Belém this week. I'd like to begin by thanking Simon Steele and Heike Henn for their insightful interventions on the clean energy transition and reminding us of the urgent need to accelerate industrial transformation. Their leadership, I would say, and I think everybody here agrees, really does set the tone for an ambition that we have to carry forward. I especially appreciated Simon's comments about speed, scale, and inclusiveness, as well as Heike's points about a clean industrial deal that incorporates lead markets, as well as, of course, you're highlighting the pledge, which is a tremendous accomplishment, and your subtle foreshadowing for the 18th. I'm sorry, folks. I'm not gonna give any spoilers here. So you'll have to attend the event on the 18th in the German Pavilion if you want to know what the big announcement for the Climate Club is. But we look forward to sharing it with you. Just to say for a moment on the pledge, you know, we view this as a milestone that really does reflect the strong commitment of our Climate Club membership, and it's also a response to the asks by the industry. There's many private sector actors who are willing to invest in the transition, which is, you know, clear, and in order to do that, they need clear and stable policy frameworks and supporting structures to kickstart markets and de-risk investments in breakthrough technologies that are at the brink of commercialization. Concerted action by multiple governments, like the 46 members of the Climate Club, sets the direction of travel for global markets, and we think that the pledge is a powerful reminder of our government's willingness to act in that regard. Over the next year, the Climate Club is going to continue to work together towards a common understanding, and now that we have the pledge in place, of how to define near zero emissions and low emission steel and cement. We believe that this is going to be a key element to guide markets, and our pledge, by the way, is open to all those who wish to join. The industrial transformation is not just a climate imperative, friends. It is also a major economic opportunity. We know from IEA data that the potential market for near zero emissions in steel and cement amounts to over 500 billion USD by 2035. But we also know that there's a challenge and a call that's embedded in this opportunity. We're going to need $50 billion in near zero cement, net zero cement and steel technologies investment over the next decade. And we know that 3/4 of that investment to meet our targets is going to need to take place in EMDEs, where the cost of capital can be anywhere from 50 to 100% higher than in advanced economies. So to sustain and accelerate this transition, we need further collaboration across governments, stakeholders, and initiatives as we are gathered here today to continue accelerating momentum, giving visibility to the best practices, progress, fostering dialogue, and jointly working on solutions to support the industrial transformation globally. After all, it is not just about, as I'm sure you'll all appreciate, cutting emissions, but it's also about creating jobs and economic opportunity that needs to be inclusive at its heart. And so I am now very pleased to turn to a distinguished panel of actors who are involved in reshaping heavy industry. I can't wait to hear what they have to say and the lessons that we can all take away from it. And so with that, I'll thank you for your attention and turn back over to you, Arati. Thanks again.
Thanks so much, Michael. And I think the points you make help set the stage for the discussion we're about to have. And that's the importance of inclusivity, creating these jobs, and speaking the same language as we move forward together. To start our panel discussion, I'd like to welcome on stage Chitum Buchunga, Head of Adaptation and Resilience with the Climate Investment Fund, CIF. I'd like to also ask on stage David Higgins, Head of International Climate and Energy, Government of Australia. I'd like to welcome on stage Luisa Ore, Chief Business Development Officer at Stegra. And Winston Beck, Group Public Affairs and Funding at Heidelberg Cement. Winston, please. Okay, so I want to start, Luisa, with you. Now, Stegra has been working in a disruptive environment for the last few years, and you've been working to create FID. You have a construction under progress, almost realizing FID. I'd like to ask you, what have been some of your key challenges in getting from where you are today to where you started with ambition? What took you reaching ambition into action?
So Stegra, previously H2 Green Steel, started in 2021, and the world was a little bit different at the time. We had an idea that if 8% of the world's carbon dioxide emissions come from the steel industry, there must be something to do about this. There was, we thought, relevant climate frameworks in place already then, and through the automotive industry, who was decarbonizing their own production, we knew that there was a demand to reduce the carbon dioxide emissions in their production process. But they didn't have any alternatives. They tried to scan the market and couldn't find anything. What surprised us actually was that the technology was mature. It wasn't a bold invention that somebody thought up of in a lab. The technologies that we put together have been around for decades. And so what we're doing is building Europe's first steel plant in Europe in 50 years and in the north of Sweden. It's going to produce 2.5 million tons in its first phase and up to 5 million tons in its second phase of steel that has 95% lower carbon dioxide emissions. And the challenges that we had to overcome, so the very first one was to make sure that we had the financing to put it together. And that's it's not a walk in the park. That was an investment of 6.5 billion euros that we closed in 2023. But there was a lot of excitement and demand. From an equity perspective, investors really believe that, as we talked about previously, the green transition is not just charity, it's a business opportunity as well, especially in the context of industrial competitiveness in Europe. The large part of the financing is also debt, so project finance, and there it's a matter of reducing the risk in the business case. Believe it or not, our lenders, they didn't want to calculate too much upside or too much that was reliant on EU policy. Just to give you an example, and that's because there's not always a predictability on it. So the challenge was to make it a sufficiently robust business case, even without including the policy to support it. Until now, then, the main projects, I mean, the main demand comes from our customers. We were able to secure offtake agreements with our customers for 7 years. That's quite uncommon in the steel industry. It's a commodity industry, and most of it goes on much shorter contracts, so that was the first challenge. But once we did that, that enabled us to close the financing. There was a lot of risk that we managed to take out from an infrastructure perspective. You need to make sure that there's electricity infrastructure, port infrastructure, rail infrastructure, a permitting process that goes along at the same time so that you don't have everything in place but not a permit, or vice versa. And now it's just the challenges of building Europe's largest industrial project. We have 4,100 construction workers on site, but we're on track we're completed over 60% of the plant, progressing about 1% per week. The winter is a little bit slower up in the north of Sweden, but by the end of the next year, we'll be starting up production and ramping up over the next 18 months. And we want to show that it is possible, and it is possible, and it was enabled a lot of it by the policy and the climate frameworks that were in place.
So I want to ask you, because you've heard now the opening speakers talking about the different platforms that have made this discussion possible. All these platforms work with multi-stakeholder engagement, business, government, civil society. Now, you talk about where H2 Green Steel started, where the concept and the thinking was so new and where we are today. A lot has happened in that time. From your perspective, this de-risking, of course it's financial, but to what extent does the role of multi-sector and multi-stakeholder platforms like the ITA, like Lead It, like the Climate Club play into pushing the discussion forward to make the investors ready to take on new ideas?
I think the investors are there, and there's a lot of capital waiting to be deployed, and a lot of capital that is waiting to be deployed into good business that is also sustainable. There is a lot of value in platforms like Lead It and the ones that you mentioned, and I think what we need to become wary of is very much the content of those platforms depends on the members of it, and what policy is proposed or driven by any number of individuals that sometimes might be having or prioritizing their own agenda, of course. But I think in general, the demand is definitely there. I think when we talk about lead markets as an example, and I've said this week, 9 times out of 10, I will pick a stable EU ETS and CBAM, where we don't have delays on the phase out of free allowances, because that is, we introduced a measure and then we keep changing it. So we're talking about we want stability, and instead we just keep changing it and adding and subtracting. And I think that those constant changes, we're trying to compensate it with new ones, but they can't compensate it because the risk that introduces into the business model is quite complicating. So I think that the stability and the vision, and also that the collective of platforms, countries, governments that are serious about addressing decarbonization and climate change, we also need to push the narrative. because now, especially over the past year, there has been kind of a counterculture movement, and that we need to continue to promote the good stories and show that it's not just blips in the environment, but this is a real movement that has momentum.
Thank you so much, Louisa. Winston, I want to come to you, taking up from what Louisa said. Now, you're talking about Stegra going policy neutral in your decisions, in your strategy, because, for the truth be told, you can't always rely on the long term in terms of predictability when it comes to policy. Winston, Heidelberg Cement has 2 plants in process now. One, of course, in Norway, one coming up in Wales. Now, you've been dealing with, of course, the public sector and making this FID a realization. From your perspective, what are the key elements of the public sector engagement that we need to keep in mind when we reach final conclusions?
Yes. Yes. Does it work? Yes. Can you hear me? Yes. All right. So indeed. So I think a lot what we have heard just from Stegra is also true for us, especially when it comes to the challenges. I think the starting point and the solutions are somewhat different. For those who are not so familiar with cement, right? I mean, we are also an energy and emission-intensive business, but our challenge is that 30% of our emissions coming from the energy side, but 70% of our emissions are coming from the actually process, so the chemistry of our production. So we need several solutions and technologies in order to reduce our emissions, and we do need carbon capture, storage, and utilization in order to actually get to net zero. It's the only technology so far which can get us to net zero. So we have started the journey quite early on to look at what does it actually mean. I think one of the challenges we are having around 200 clinker plants, so the CO2 intensive process around the world. We have 42 ETS installations in Europe, and these plants are old, right? Sometimes they are 100 years old, and they are a high heat, not so complex production process, but it's all about volume. And when we install a CCS plant on top of it, that is a low heat, very complex chemical plant on top of our cement plant. So it is a challenge, and one of the challenges is that, of course, it's very CapEx and OpEx intensive. So we need to do a lot of investments, and at the moment, there is not a clear business case for these types of solutions. We are investing 1 billion euros per year in these types of technologies. So we did green bonds, raising 1.2 billion euros in the last two years. But we do need public support in order to close the gap. The other point is that on the infrastructure, we need to develop the energy infrastructure. We will increase our electricity usage twofold or threefold over the course of our decarbonization. And we also need to build the CO2 network, both the pipelines as well as the storage infrastructure. And lastly, we need to work on the demand side of things. So far, we are already making 35% of our revenues with low carbon solutions, which is 30% CO2 reduced. But in order to educate to our customers to actually go to near zero cement and concrete, that is something completely new, right? So what we have done in Brevik, we have installed the CCS. It's operational now since June. We have stored the first CO2 underground in August, and we have actually shipped the first near zero cement to our customers in October. That's worldwide the first near zero cement happening, right? And now we have also in September reached FID in Padeswood Wells. And what was absolutely the trigger point for these projects to be successful is indeed the cooperation with the governments. They have supported us through funding, but they have also supported us through putting the necessary legislation in place and working with all the stakeholders which help us to get there. So for example, in Norway, we are working closely with a consortium of Shell, Equinor, and Total, which have actually implemented the infrastructure and the storage necessary.
I think we can give Winston, a round of applause. But I actually want to ask you a question, because Louisa talked about permitting and some of the tricky solutions when you start pulling projects into place. You talked about, of course, the 2 projects that you're now working on with FID. I want to ask you, we've all talked about the importance of government, industry, civil society. if we dig a little deeper when it comes to civil society, and you've talked about public support quite specifically, what is Heidelberg Cement? What have you done to actually help facilitate public support in terms of addressing some of the questions that come up as you take these discussions forward?
Yeah, and I think it's absolutely key to take the public with us. That includes our own workers. It includes the communities around our cement plants. Some of our cement plants are in bigger clusters. Other cement plants are quite remote, but with a strong identity with the communities. Right? It's quite often that generations of families have worked for the plants in our quarries or in the production itself. And of course, it also includes the citizens, which are actually living in the buildings, using the infrastructure which is built with our products. I think what we need to do is we need to be very transparent about our solutions. We need to be transparent about the challenges and transparent about the opportunities. And we need to do that from a very, very early point. We need to take them with us as soon as we start actually thinking and planning about decarbonizing the plants. We had some challenges as well. I think Norway is a best practice example because the plant is located directly at the sea, right? So we can ship out the CO2 from the port located at the plant. We had our workers are living around the plant for many years. So and then this process has started 20 years ago, so they were involved from the very start. But what we see in other areas, for example, also the discussions we are having in Germany, where it was just approved having a CO2 transport and storage law in place, is that there's a lot of misconceptions around these types of technologies. We actually done a study in North Rhine-Westphalia where we asked, do you prefer to have a CO2 or a hydrogen pipeline in your backyard? And actually the majority said we would like to have a hydrogen pipeline. Even though the one is explosive, the other one carbon, you have all around, right? So we really need to tackle these myths. We need to educate. We need to raise awareness. And then I think we can move forward. Because in the end, we are all sharing the same goal, right? We want to get to net zero, and we want to do that in a competitive way. That is also in the interest of the communities, because our workers would like to continue to be employed. And of course, the transition is actually what we have realized as soon as we, 15 years ago, put together our roadmap, having very stringent target, working on the transition. I think that has caused very positive reactions. And actually, I don't think we would be able to employ now this new talent and the skills without having these transition plans in place, because the young workers, they would simply not be interested to work for us any longer.
Winston, thank you so much. Lisa, I actually want to ask you to comment on this as well, because we have industry speaking right now, talking about the changes that need to be made from the ground up. Winston, you touched upon transparency, but also reassuring communities that change actually works in their favor. And you talked about this too, Luisa, as well, as how do we confirm and actually address assumptions and say, actually, no, as you touched upon, these are the realities that actually are taking place as we transition.
I think the most important thing is to have a dialogue and listen. Our plant that is in the north of Sweden, it's in a beautiful area. The north of Sweden is very sparsely populated, and it's just outside of Boden, where most people bought their house because they wanted to be close to fantastic cross-country skiing trails. And the municipality of Boden had prepared then a piece of land for electricity-intensive industry, and they were expecting data centers. And along came a steel plant. And I think that you just have to be very humble about the fact that it's quite a difficult situation for some people that live quite close to the plant, that are there to get away from it all. And since day one, we've been very keen on and it's been very important to us to have a very, very consistent dialogue with the local community. There is also the Sami indigenous community in the north of Sweden. And it's and finding the balance of making sure that this industrial development also happens on their terms. There is also excitement, of course. So this town that we are basing our steel plant in, it was a town previously declining in population. They had lost a lot of jobs and industry recently. And so this was a very welcome change from one perspective, but you can't take that for granted. And it's not just a one-time thing. You don't just do it and then you get the permit and it's like, see you later. This is something that you have to continue, and we have a very regular engagement with the local community on a continuous basis.
Louisa, Winston, thank you so much. And I want to come to David now, talking about from the government perspective. What you've told about is the importance of trust, the importance of de-risking through reconfirmation and engagement. David, Australia, of course, is now scoping new projects. And we've heard from Winston and Louisa of what these projects could look like once they reach fruition. You have over 53 projects scoped worth over $200 billion US. From your perspective, what will it take to get these projects into reality from the pipeline?
Can anyone hear me? Yes. It's great to be here, first of all, and great to be part of this conversation. It's been fascinating to hear directly from industry, so my thanks to you guys for organising us here. And let me just give a shout out to the Climate Club, to Michael. Heike made reference to this too. It's wonderful to be convened by Germany and Chile for the conversations that we have between national governments on some of these really thorny issues that are so fundamental to resolve collectively, to ultimately achieve exactly what you're getting at. Now, in terms of the Australian context, perhaps a little bit of scene setting, and some of these themes have been touched on by my fellow panelists, but I think what has been so obvious, and it is blindingly obvious, but absent the policy certainty, absent the predictability that the private sector needs, investment does not flow. And so our government has been resolutely determined over the period of its term in office, so 3.5 years now, to set that policy framework in place. That's number one. And so we are doing everything we can to build a framework that is predictable, and that offers, set about establishing a governance mechanism that links my minister with his state and territory colleagues to build a shared agenda, and that's been critically important. We, at the national level, though, set national policy, and that has been incredibly powerful at generating the necessary the necessary signal to market that we are indeed open for business and intend to remain open for business. So the government, at the beginning of its first term, revised our 2035 NDC to set that first signal, increased it really significantly, and then set about building the analytical and policy framework that would underpin our 2035 NDC that was released a couple of months ago. It's a very significant increase in emissions reduction ambition, but it's set out very much as a manifesto of the economic opportunity that we see at the end of the energy transition. We are rapidly moving ourselves up the emissions reduction curve as we rapidly move ourselves up the renewable penetration curve in our electricity generation system. We hope to be at 82% by 2030. We're only at 44 or so percent now, but we absolutely have a policy framework to get us there. But ultimately our aspiration is to be well beyond 100% renewable, because it's that renewable energy that is so prospective in terms of driving the economic opportunity. We set out a net zero plan that describes the policy framework that gets us from here to net zero by 2030, underpinned by 6 sectoral plans that speak to how we intend to decarbonise each of the critical sectors that are so integral in the economy that we imagine in the future. And to be very clear, it is that economy in the future that where the economic opportunity lies for us, and we are convinced lies for all of our partners globally. We took our NDC and turned it last week into something we're calling Australia's NDC Investment Blueprint, to set out very clearly just how singular our intention is to work with our partners, particularly in the private sector, to provide a landscape that allows for that predictability and that certainty of investment. And critically, for someone in a position like mine, I'm working with my international partners, who are our existing trading partners, new trading partners, to explore the ways in which we can decarbonise together, because it's through that power of partnership that really drives the opportunity. We work with Germany on H2 Global. We're working with Korea on the potential of green iron and green steel, similarly with Japan. And I think there is a huge role for national governments unilaterally, but in concert, to work with the private sector in a different kind of way as we try and imagine the potential of this economy. And just one sort of final point, and this was again touched on by my colleagues. We do recognise some of the inherent challenges in the frameworks that we have in place, and they are not easily resolved. We are working in a time where there are geopolitical and frankly thousands